So, till now we have been talking about one printing methodology which was called the transfer printing, and we are going to be talking for next few lectures on another fascinating technology which has shown a lot of promise, and that is what will work it out. So, for transfer printing, we have seen the sublimation transfer printing is the most successful transfer printing method. The wet transfer and film release transfer also are possibilities, but not necessarily commercially very successful processes. So, today we will look at what we call as an introduction to digital printing, just the concept to begin with, and in subsequent lectures we will take specific issues related to digital transfer textile printing, digital textile printing. So, this in some sense is an extension or a nice way to a changeover in a thought process from paper transfer to directly printing the textiles. The way the printing industry went on to increase speeds and could print anything on the paper. So, people wanted to see why can't we directly use the technology to print textiles. By the time textile people got really interested, paper industry already had in one way or the other used the digital printing on papers. So, like you see inkjet printing of paper which is being done quite conveniently. So, people wanted to see why whatever is being first printed on a paper and then being transferred, why can't we use the same technology to print textile directly. So, that is one motivation which has led to this industry. Interestingly, the initial people who got interested in making machines were very different people than those who were making textile printing machines. People like Epson, who were making printers for paper printing, they got interested in this business. And so, things have progressed, and we believe that they are going to progress further. So, today what we will look at is what is the market trend approximately, and how do we say analog and a digital printing are two different sets and methods, and possible advantages of digital printing. Some other thing which from the term point of view we will try to understand what we call as a spot and process colors. So, difference between spot and process colors, some essential steps, and inkjet printing process of textiles. Let me just tell you, for paper printing we have laser printing also. For textile printing till now there is no laser printing unless you make the textile behave like a paper. So, it is not happening. So, basically inkjet printing. When we talk about digital printing, we basically are talking about processes which are called the inkjet printing. So, sometimes you will see these things, and any pre or post treatments that may be needed we just introduce, will not be discussing this in detail. This is a fact which is generally very discouraging for anything which is novel. The transfer printing that we discussed till now, particularly the sublimation transfer printing, just about 5% of the market it holds. Roller printing, if you remember, the machine is discussed, taught in so many ways, also is similar and approximately 5%. Everything that is printed today textile is screen printing. So, either you have a flatbed or you have a rotary. If you add them all, what remains? So, people can either see an opportunity or may like to get discouraged. Why go for a technology which hardly anybody seems to be using, right? So, what it means as an opportunity is that if it can offer things which the others cannot, then you can obviously account for it. One of the reasons has been that the people who were printing paper got initially involved, it was good, but they did not know textile requirement. So, textile printed fabric has to be washed time and again, exposure is different. Printing of paper only meant everything is in the dark rooms, all pictures are dark. If you try to expose any printed paper to sunlight, it won't take more than a few hours to few days before you see the change. While you expect in a textile that years of use also would not change much of it. It is not a zero change, but people still wear garments which are very old. Then the width, general width of printing of textiles is very large. So, you have 1 meter, 1.5 meter fabric which continuously are used for printing purposes. Paper printing people, particularly the inkjet people, were not really using such heavy width. So, machines were costly. Selection of ink as to what kind of ink one should use which would actually do whatever job that does became a problem. And inkjet printing by itself had a concept which believed in 4 colors only. If you see your printing cartridge, it has got 3 colors and a black. So, they believe in 4 colors and creating everything, which means whatever you see, you will be able to see, whatever you see on a screen, you should be able to print it on the textiles. That means the kind of dyes that you have to generate, they have to be so standard that if you mix them, you will get exactly same response which you get on a screen, which was a challenge. First, the challenge is making such a big printing machine and then making dyes which would reproduce exactly. So, the process became costly. The dyes are also very costly. They are not available in Sadar Bazaar, right? You will have to really, it's all standard, very standard companies are the only ones who can hope to make such dyes. So, it became a costly process. So, people started using it only for sampling purposes rather than production. That is why it looks as if not many people appear to be interested, but now things are changing. So, this is what we are saying. Why do we the discussion at all on digital printing of textiles? This is one reason which people think could be interesting. That is, printing is basically a fashion dependent process, and fashions are changing these days pretty fast. And that would mean that somebody will not like to use your design which you produced 6 months back, which means that your change is coming fast. 5 to 6 forecasts in 1 year across the globe, that is the kind of design you are looking at. So, that means you want more flexibility. Unique designs, great variety. Now, somebody says, well, I want this print only for myself. For example, your own photograph on your t-shirt. So, that means there is no much order. So, you can't make a screen or rollers or anything else just because, or somebody just prefers a design and says this design nobody else should get it, or I want the next one is very different. It may not be possible with the conventional methods. And because of this, the chances of repeat orders are becoming rare. If this is actually true in the fashion industry, then obviously you have to have a technology which can do this at the click of the mouse, as they say. Average run lengths are rapidly dropping. So, if somebody say, please give me 50 meters printed, no other technology will try to give you 50 meters. So, we have a hope. So, the hope is that the textile printing is rapidly changing globalization, quick response, ecological considerations. If everything is done nicely, let us say you can print through inkjet printing pigment based system. So, any kind of a blend of a textile or any nature, it gets done. What it means is maybe you do not have to wash it also. One go, you have finished. And so, ecologically maybe an attraction, and that is why you may still think that we can discuss digital printing. Flexibility and versatility, these are two terms which are used these days. How fast you can change and how many things can you do. So, this technology has the option of providing this type of a flexibility and versatility. People were talking earlier of mass production. Mass production is done to reduce the cost of any production. The fashion industry actually believes in mass customization, that I want something for myself, I do not matter whether somebody else wants or not, depends on how much money you have. But this technology theoretically can offer to anyone anything that you want as far as printing is concerned. So, it is a mass customization. 1000 people want 1000 different things, you say I will give you. No other technology can provide you, unless and until you got really big orders, you do not want to change your design. As we mentioned before also, short runs, I said, as little as 1 unit only. This no other technology can even think of offering. And unlimited design, designs there is no limit. Well, I can give you 10, I can give you 20 designs, whatever you want I can give you, that kind of thing. So, we have a comparison, as they say in the electronic word, digital versus analog. So, from our purpose, the conventional printing method can be considered an analog method, where you do block making, roller making, screen making, and do manual separation of colors. Then you make tracing, which are manual, screens are made. All these take time, whether they are manual or mechanized, and not easy to customize unless your customer is big and you have big order, then you customize, but it is not individual customization. And therefore, we said it is a digital, which means allows short runs at economical cost, short runs at economical cost. Larger runs will always be more economical. If somebody gives you a digital printing design order of 10,000 meters, you will probably make more money. But the interesting part is the machine cost remains fixed, which could be quite high. The ink cost will also not change when you use more meters to be printed. If suppose you require 20% area being covered in the design per meter, and whether you print 1 meter, you print 20,000 meter, the percentage of ink required to cover the 20% of the area will remain the same. And so, the electricity and other costs that you have, infrastructure, that also remain same. So, this is one technology which does not say that if you have large orders that your cost is going to come down, unless and until you also have a pre and post processes needed to do that. Then the larger orders will become more cheap. So, in some sense, particularly a few type of printing systems obviously will be creating green image. Very expensive methods of screen preparations are avoided. Changing from one color scheme to other and one design to other is simpler and cheaper and less time consuming. When somebody used to say initially that, well, this is the kind of a design, please make and design and show before approval, 6 to 7 weeks is the minimum time that was required. So, which obviously in a textile scene could be reduced to 2.5 weeks. So, you can have more chances of getting orders. Definitely for sampling, short runs and mass customization, that is what we are looking at. So, it is crisp and clean technology. So, all you require is a file on a computer and if it is linked to a printing machine which is called a inkjet printer. The design data or the image is basically pixels or dots, pixels on the screen and dots on the textile. Like we did talk about dots in paper printing. So, paper printing is now coming to the textile. So, you are actually printing dots. Of course, you have to still select a design which somebody likes it or you will ensure that somebody will like it, or a design somebody gives, you have a scanner, you can scan, and if you have good scanner, you will get good design. And then connect to a software. The softwares are becoming smarter also. For example, let us say it will be very difficult for us to think of inkjet printing with discharge printing and so on and so forth. What you will do is a direct printing only, because it will be very difficult to use all kinds of chemicals in the ink of a printer. So, that is done. So, is a simple ink which is there. The color separation here takes place automatically because computation is taking place looking at which color and dividing into 4 colors. Every design is separated into 4 colors, and so you have standard dyes which are going to be used, and once it is separated then printing takes place, and it is a non-contact printing. The printer does not contact the surface of the fabric, unlike our normal printing where surface of the textile comes in contact with the screen or a roller or anything else. Here it does not come in contact. So, non-contact printing this is. So, there is something called a spot color. A spot color is what we use in conventional printing. You need a green, so you mix 2 or 3 colors to get a right green and then use that to print. So, you initially mix colors before and then do the printing, and hopefully you will be able to match the shade. Shade matching in printing, as we said, is a difficult job because there are so many elements there. So, these are called spot colors. Spot colors means you have already made a color which is going to finally be appearing as it is on the fabric, mixing taking place. The process colors are the ones you do not mix before. So, the process that is used in inkjet printing is called the process colors. So, desired shade is produced on a fabric itself during printing. So, superimposing the dots in the limited number of colors, which is CMYK. So, these are the 4 colors are there. One can use additional colors sometimes in textiles. One of the colors could be white, but generally 4 colors could be there which can produce any color, infinite shades and colors. So, what you require is a computer, software, digital printer and textile substrate. Suppose you want to print some design on a, let us say, a dark black t-shirt which he is wearing, and you want to use a light lemon on this. If you print it, will you see anything there? So, how do we print that? So, what people have been doing is printing everything with white, the block. So, print with block, after printing with the white block, then print on that the color, then it becomes visible. So, you make a square or a circle or whatever, and then in between then you make all design. So, which meant that it is not the thing that you wanted. I mean, you just want the design, and suddenly what you say is, you have to, somebody has modified the design, कि भाई ये अगर print करना है, if you want to print this, you got to print a white on this before your design will be visible. So, this was one of the limitations, that you have to print light colored material. Till the software were designed in a manner that yes, we can print white so that the light colors also look good, but it will print exactly the white where the overall design is. So, you actually calculate where the design is and exactly print only those areas where the design, and the white will never come out of that part. So, accuracy levels are very high. So, one thing which is here is accuracy. You cannot afford to have a situation where fabric vibrates, shifts its position and expect the design to be same, because this is a non-contact material. So, the drop will be thrown wherever the head is, and so if your fabric is shifted, so dot will be somewhere else, and therefore, the software obviously does. So, one of course has to make sure that the fabric goes the way it is supposed to go, and today the software can print the white exactly where the complete design is. Wherever there is a no design, there is no white, and then in the second stage you print the design. And so, hardware is very important here, which is a printer, the costliest material. You have choking of normal screens, and you say, well, wash it, everything, and then clean. If a printer head chokes, you have to basically change. There is nothing cleaning of a printer head. So, it is a costly. So, you have to maintain things, and this probably will be also a technology which would like the printer to have an environment which is almost air conditioned. If you run a machine 24/7 in a dusty environment, you never know what will happen, and what will happen on a print is a separate story. What happens to the machine is a greater concern, that despite everything else. The printer is costlier simply because the printer head, if you have seen the inkjet printing machine, it is the printer head which moves from one end to the other. It takes time for something to move from one end to the other before the fabric gets further or pushed out. So, the speeds are slow. So, suddenly somebody said that if you have a printed paper, I can run transfer printing machine at almost 500 to 1000 meters per minute or per hour. Here those kind of things per hour, you will not be able to do it, okay, but that is okay. But now what they are doing is, in the hardware segment, that it moves, the head moving together may not be one, there will be a block of heads moving together. And so, in one go they print quite a lot, when they come back also they print, It is not like going and then returning. So, returning to the station means twice it has printed, and one can think of having 4 heads running together. Big machines may even want 8 heads running together, and which would mean that the per meter printing speed should increase. So, inkjet technology, you are looking at some drops being generated and thrown. So, different principles are there, which we will of course talk in more detail whenever we meet next time. So, but think of this, what you are looking at is 50 to 60 microns in diameter. Photo quality image can be created here as well, all right. So, these 4 colors will remove. So, what exactly happens in this process color is that the green is not made by putting one drop over the other. What you are doing is a drop next to it, no drop falls over each other, but if the size is small, the perception in the eyes looks like as if it is a continuous shade. If you have less green and more yellow, then it will give you a perception, because there are so many of them. If you have large dots, then you can see the dots separately, but if the dots are very, very small, you see is a continuous color. If you magnify, you can see that, and so it is a perception, and who is supposed to be satisfied is us. As a human being, we are supposed to satisfy with the shade and color, and so if that is what our resolution is. So, that is what you have to beat that resolution and you get it right. So, you can produce millions of shades. So, high frequency signals pushing the drops at a very, very fast rate, and that means at some command given somewhere, something happening somewhere. So, this whole process of transfer of signals, creating a signal and finally this transducer throwing a drop out, obviously is a sophisticated process, and so it has taken time and some costs are probably high. Now, how do you create a droplet? Somewhere by some method you will be pushing some chamber where the liquid is, and unlike, for example, the paper printing that we see in an inkjet printer, there is a cartridge which has got a small little chamber. Here you can have a continuous supply also of ink from somewhere else. So, there will be pipes running which will also move along with the head. So, that you have more larger reservoir, because you are going to be printing more, and hopefully you will be printing more because you want this particular ink to diffuse bit also. So, that you are also interested in wash fastness, it is not just on the surface. Do we require a pretreatment? Conventional printing requires all scouring, bleaching, etc., etc. So, I mean, if you require a bleached fabric, you will require a bleached fabric. If you call it a pretreatment, yes, of course. You can't take a grey fabric and start printing and say, well, nobody likes. You can print it, but who will like it? So, from that point of view, yes. So, you will get bleached or dyed fabric which are used for conventional printing. So, you in a conventional printing, you have the bleached dyed fabric, of course. You require chemical auxiliaries for fixation, thickener, urea, alkali acids, deforming agents. In the print paste, it is viscous, but here in the digital printing, chemical auxiliaries cannot be incorporated in the ink which comes out from the printer head, and therefore, you get restricted. What can you print and what you cannot print? It would restrict the free flow and even corrode the jets. So, all those things will not be there. Therefore, some of these things, if required, will have to be put on the fabric first. You may like to do a bit of a coating so that there is no spread. which can be done. So, some fabric preparation may be required, so that the hairs that you see on the surface of fabric, which you do not see on a paper, can obviously, if a hair is jutting out and the drop falls in the hair, so all your accuracy is finished. So, you may like to first do that. So, some pre-treatment could be there. In case you actually think that you have an acid dye to be printed, then you may have to do some pre-treatment so that that gets fixed. If you think it's a reactive dye, then you have to do pre-treatment with a reactive dye, may be required. Post-treatment also may be required depending on the type of the fabric and the ink that you are using. So, unlike the transfer printing, where you only had a choice of dispersed dye, here people are now looking at pigments, reactives, acids and all such type of dyes. So, there is a choice of substrate also has changed. Otherwise, you said only polyester, maybe other synthetic fibers, but again only polyester. So, that transfer printing in a way is limited to a particular dye and a particular substrate. In the inkjet, you are not so much limited, because the inks of different types are available now, and so different type of fabrics also can be printed, which means that well, silk, wool, cotton, nylon and blends, because if pigment is there, without a problem. So, looking at what is happening at the ITMA, it appears the interest in this printing technology is growing at a faster pace. If we get a chance, we may visit one of the digital textile printing houses here and see how they earn. But of course, you are doing, if you are printing hydrophilic fibers, then obviously the washing and other steaming fixation also have to be done. So, printing is only one part then. If you are doing pigment, then that is the last process, you can go straight. I think that is what would be what we call as the introduction, which means we know where do we stand, we understand what is digital analog printing, spot and process colors, basic steps, and why pre and post treatment may be required in digital printing as well. That is it, we stop.